everyone. You are listening to the latest Flyers Talk podcast presented by Great Railing. I am Jordan Hall, and as always, I am joined by the dynamic Joe Fordyce. Joe, we are just about at that regular season opener, and the preseason is just about finished. The Flyers play their preseason finale on Friday night. They are 5 games into their 6-game preseason slate, and their roster is just about down to the to what they want it to be going to that regular season opener. The big news, Joe, Morgan Frost, one of their top prospects, did not make the roster. He was assigned to Lehigh Valley, the team's AHL affiliate. That was certainly a surprise because he seemed like the clear-cut favorite to fill in for Kevin Hayes, who, as we know, is going to miss 6 to 8 weeks because of abdominal surgery. Frost was put in all the situations. He played with James Van Riemsdyk and Joel Farabee. He played with Cam Atkinson and Oscar Lindblom. He had the chance to really win that job, but he did not. Joe, what did you think of Morgan Frost not making the team? Were you upset? Did you understand it? And how will the team adjust in your mind?
Well, Jordan, I said on the last podcast that it was kind of disappointing to me that he did not take the bull by the horns here with this opportunity. When Taryn and I spoke with him at Media Day a few weeks ago, he did say that the Hayes injury had made it sort of an extra emphasis this camp to really seize the opportunity to with a big one in front of him that basically, it seemed for all intents and purposes that it was his job to lose, at least for the interim while Hayes wasn't in the lineup. And he lost it. But I don't think there's any other way to look at this. Now, there's a number of factors here, and Chuck Fletcher addressed some of those yesterday when he spoke, and he said, he spoke about the layoff, which we've discussed here on the podcast several times, about how little hockey he's played recently because of the injury that he suffered. So that might be part of it. But nothing that he said when he talked about the layoff would indicate that he was feeling any sort of way other than at his best. So, it was surprising to me. I really, Taryn's pointed out several times and asked Morgan about it a number of times, Media Day, and there was she did a Zoom interview with him a month or so ago, and he's bulked up. It looked like he really focused on the physical, I guess you could say the physical part of his game, but putting on pounds because, we all know what he doesn't, his stature is not that of, he's not a guy out there that's going to physically intimidate anyone with his size. And, maybe the injury he suffered, maybe that was kind of a wake up call, like, hey, I need to pack on a little bit of pounds here to make myself more durable in this league. So it's clear he focused on that. So, but he didn't win the job. And what are you going to, what can you do? And the other thing, and Chuck Fletcher pointed it out yesterday, and we've talked about it plenty on this podcast, that they want Morgan Frost playing games. They don't want him sitting in the rafters watching games in the press box. And it, with the way he played, combined with his, there really wouldn't be a spot once Hayes came back. I guess they thought the best way to get him game action is to get him with the Phantom. So they'll play top forward minutes, and he'll play on an every night basis with the Phantoms, and that's the way to get him, get him back in game shape. And then, we've talked about it before. There's going to be injuries. It's inevitable. There will be things that come up during the course of a season, and maybe he's in a better place to make an impact with this team down the line in this season. But I don't think there's any way to look at this other than to be disappointed that he didn't kind of take the reins and run with it, given that it was almost, hey, this is yours. So as long as you don't give it away, it'll be yours. And then it's not his. And I don't know how to look at that other than be disappointed.
Yeah, I think Chuck Fletcher was being fully honest when he was discussing Morgan Frost and why they made the decision. Um, he had a lot of good things to say. He said Morgan Frost actually had a better camp than they anticipated. They thought, given what he had gone through with his shoulder surgery and then obviously COVID-19, bringing a halt to his initial rookie season at the pro level. He had gone 560 plus days of playing only 2 pro hockey games before his preseason debut. So that is a long time, and he's coming off shoulder surgery. So that is a lot. But I do feel like Chuck Fletcher was sugarcoating it a little bit because they're trying to not have people push the panic button on this kid. They're trying to make sure Morgan Frost keeps his confidence up. But the fact is, they probably would have loved for him to go in there and win this job and take the bull by the horns, like you said, Joe. And he just didn't. And so it's not the end of the world. It is not the end of the world. But, I mean, if Morgan Frost goes in there and he has 2 goals, 2 assists, or a goal, 3 assists, has a great preseason, they're probably raving about Morgan Frost, and they've got him in their second line center spot. Instead, he went scoreless, and he just didn't look like himself. He did look like timing was off, and he did look like he was starting the press. And I think at that point, the Flyers realized, you know what, like he's starting the press already in terms of I need to make plays, I need to score in the preseason. What happens when he gets to the regular season and he's pressing even more? They probably felt the right thing to do for Morgan Frost was let this kid go to AHL affiliate Lehigh Valley, let him build his confidence, let him go in a less pressure situation where people aren't watching as much, and let him play again, play in all situations. He's going to kill penalties down there. He, of course, is going to play on the power play. He's going to be one of their top centers. He's going to be in really good spots to just feel comfortable again, build confidence. And when he gets back to the Flyers eventually, he'll be a confident player, a kid that feels like himself again. Morgan Frost is what Chuck Fletcher said the other day, a top player that probably hasn't been cut many times in his life. He needs to get his confidence back. And I do believe the Flyers feel strongly that what he went through is really difficult. That's a long time to not be playing games for a kid that's probably been used to playing hockey nonstop, year round, very little breaks. So that is difficult. But at the same time, if Morgan Frost went in there and totally knocked the door down, we wouldn't be saying his timing looks off or, hey, this is best for him to go to Lehigh Valley. He just didn't win the job. That's okay. It happens. And the Flyers have to adjust now.
Yeah, and what you'd like to see is, and I'll just compare it to the end of last season. Now, I know the circumstances were totally different and the players different, but when Wade Allison came up, right away he came in, he produced, he was all over the ice. You never didn't notice him, and he made the decision. And there really wasn't a comparable decision to make at that time of the season for the Flyers, but the Flyers would want a guy to make it hard for them to take him out of the lineup. Like, we have to keep playing this kid. And that's not what Morgan did. Now, because of his stature within the organization and how highly touted of a prospect he is, I'm sure the decision was tough. But in terms of the results and the play on the ice, I don't think this decision was that tough for them to make because he didn't really do much. And you'd hope to see him kind of like burst off the ice and you notice him every time he's on the ice. And I just don't think that happened. Not for a good reason. I mean, you noticed him just kind of not, you noticed him because of you were looking for him, but you didn't notice him because of anything in particular that he was doing on the ice. And I think that's the disturbing and disappointing part. But, hopefully, we're all human beings, right? Like, you or I could go into a situation where we are, doing less than maybe if we, one of our bosses said, hey, we need you to just do something that you would have done in previous years in your job. And it's something the two of us could do with our eyes closed. Even though we know we're past that point, if we went and did it, it would, it puffs up your confidence. You kind of puff your chest out a little bit. That's the way it would work. So hopefully that's what happens with Morgan here. And he goes down there, plays well, produces, and gets that confidence going. And, we've all seen pro athletes that play with confidence versus guys that don't, and it affects different guys in different ways. Obviously, we talked about that in the past with Shane Gostisbehere. Maybe no player I've ever seen affected by confidence more. So, confidence is a big factor, and it affects people different ways. So hopefully, if he goes down there and gets that confidence back by producing with the Phantoms, he's ready if called upon. And again, we've said it. The Flyers have a number of veterans on this team, and to go into the season with the idea that you would come through unscathed is probably unrealistic. So, who knows? Maybe we'll see Morgan later, down the road in this season.
Flyers Talk is brought to you by Great Railing. Stop into Great Railing for the highest quality and lowest prices on all your railing, decking, and fencing needs. Joe, I do believe Morgan Frost will be back here at some point this season. I think they're going to need him at some point. If he's not, and he's developing in a full normal year with Lehigh Valley, I also don't think that's the end of the world. I've written that before. I wrote that before the Kevin Hayes injury, where it was looking like he would certainly be the odd man out down the middle once they signed Derek Brassard. I don't think it's a bad thing if he finally gets a full year at the pro level. I mean, his rookie year in 2019-20 at the pro level was really good. He was one of the Phantoms' best players. He came up to the Flyers and had a nice, real loud start. Obviously, he tapered off a little bit. That's understandable. Everything was going well until COVID-19 hit and the whole world changed. So I wouldn't think it's the end of the world if he goes down there, he develops, as long as the Flyers are doing okay, because I do worry about their depth down the middle. We'll get into that. But Chuck Fletcher did say, listen, there is no rush to Morgan Frost. He's gone through a lot. We're going to be okay. We think this is best for Morgan Frost. He will be here at some point, but let's make sure we're doing right by him. I do believe the Flyers feel strongly about that. But let's not sugarcoat it. They did give him all the opportunity to maybe see if he could really be here right now and show that the injury and everything is in the past and that his timing is here. And he just didn't quite win the job. It is what it is. Joe.
Yeah, I mean, these guys like Frost, Tanner Laczynski, I know he's injured now, but Cam York, like these prospects that the Flyers have, it's not about this season. It's about the future. And there's no reason to push the panic button on guys that you weren't counting on anyway. I mean, in a perfect world, we're not talking about whether Morgan Frost would have made the team because Kevin Hayes is the second line center and he's not injured. So it's not like this is a guy that you were expecting to do X, Y, and Z this coming season, and now he's going to the minor leagues. So it's, I don't want to say you're playing with house money because you're not. Kevin Hayes is not going to be there to start the season. But, it's not about this season for Morgan Frost, Cam York, Tanner Laczynski. The list goes on and on. So, no reason to push the panic button. We know this kid has promise. And, quite frankly, everybody's lives in whatever profession you're doing, everybody's lives have been affected over the last 2 years. It's just, there's no way to escape it. So, pro athletes are no different.
And I feel pro sports are such a what have you done for me now business. And I feel like that rings particularly true in the NHL prospect world. I mean, if you look at it, like Flyers fans and media, all of us, we tend to get excited over one big season, and a prospect has one big season and suddenly he's like the favorite prospect among us media and the fans, and everyone's real excited about the prospect because he's the talk of the town right now. All it takes is 1 year for a prospect to get hurt and kind of get back into the shadows, and all of a sudden you forget about him. You think maybe you start contemplating his future. It's such a what have you done for me now business. Morgan Frost missed all of last season. He had an injury. It doesn't mean you got to push the panic button and forget about his future. He's 22 years old. He's got really high level NHL skill. The package, everything else, it's still developing. Give us some time. I'm certainly not going to give up on Morgan Frost yet. Would I have liked to see him as their second line center right now making plays? Absolutely. But I'm not going to freak out and say trade Morgan Frost or anything like that. Like, give us some time. We'll see where it goes. But Joe, I will say I'm absolutely concerned about the Flyers' depth down the middle right now. If you look back, when the Flyers had Sean Couturier, Kevin Hayes, Nolan Patrick, everyone was like, whoa, that's some really good center depth. Three big centers that could be tough to play against. We finally have center depth, all that fun stuff. Nolan Patrick's no longer here, whether you want to talk about his season and how bad it was last year or whatnot, but he's still a second overall pick with upside. Nolan Patrick's no longer here. Morgan Frost is not in the lineup. Kevin Hayes is hurt. Now suddenly you're looking at Sean Couturier, Derek Brassard, Scott Laughton, and Nate Thompson. It doesn't blow you off the page. There's not a lot of speed there. There's older player. There's some older players in Nate Thompson, Derek Brassard. Not knocking those guys. I think they're good for depth reasons, but suddenly they're looking like they're going to have to play a lot more. I do worry about the Flyers lacking down the middle of the ice through the opening month or so of this season. Does that concern you, Joe?
It does concern me. I will say this, though. Derek Brassard is a guy who has played top forward minutes. And when I say top, I mean top six forward minutes for several successful teams and recently. So it's not like this guy, it's not like he is being put in a role that he's not used to. I don't necessarily think it was the role he came to this team expecting to play, but for the time being, I don't think it's a bad thing. And the thing with Laughton, he's a like a Swiss Army knife. He'll play wherever, up and down the lineup, wing, center, whatever the case may be, and he's always going to be there. I would be concerned about the production because Derek Brassard's never been a player that's lighting up the score sheet. Scott Laughton, not a player that's lighting up the score sheet. And again, when you look at a guy like Brassard being your second line center, there's chemistry that's to develop. And, that would be my concern. My concern would be not only the depth, but the developing chemistry in a line that you necessarily weren't expecting to play with. And then, I wasn't going into this season thinking Nate Thompson was an every game player, but it appears that he'll have to be an every game player for the beginning part of the season.
Yeah.
And, that's concerning. He's not a player that you're relying on to really do anything offensively. You're relying on him playing good checking line minutes, not much else. And, that's definitely concerning. It concerns me on the penalty kill because Kevin Hayes is a big part of that. And, I definitely think there are concerning things. And if you suffer another injury, then there's not much leeway. You're kind of maxed out at this point in terms of centers. Of course, Giroux could always move back to center, but then you're talking about what is that doing to your wings? And, there's a trickle down effect to everything. And, it's definitely a concern. And it's a concern that you really weren't anticipating having going into this season. So it'll definitely be interesting to see how this plays out.
Absolutely. And I think that's why I want to magnify the importance of Kevin Hayes. I do think he's an incredibly important player to the Flyers, and that's why I'm concerned about where they will be without him, especially with Morgan Frost not making the roster. When the Hayes injury initially happened, I thought, well, if Frost can come in and provide offense, then I think they can make do. Frost can provide some of Kevin Hayes' offensive attributes, and then you have a lot of other guys that can maybe make up for his penalty killing and his 5-on-5 defensive play. But without Frost, I do worry now about the speed down the middle and the playmaking ability, and will they be able to score enough goals to kind of stay afloat during the early parts of the season? The early parts of the season are early. I get that, but I think it is a crucial start to this season with a new look team coming off of last year, which was a disaster. I think fans really want to see a positive start. They want to feel positive energy. The team wants to feel the positive energy. They need to build a new dynamic and a new confidence going into this year. I think the start of the season will be crucial to that. If you struggle to open this year, maybe some doubts start to creep in across the fan base. maybe into your dressing room too. Of man, we're already starting slow. I think it's a very important start to the season. I think if the Flyers can stay afloat and kind of weather the storm without Hayes early on, we'll all forget about everything in terms of Morgan Frost not winning a roster spot. Do they have enough depth down the middle? I think if they can weather the storm, get Kevin Hayes back in a decent spot, they'll be fine. They'll be okay. But yeah, I can't help but look at the center depth and not see enough speed and playmaking. I think it's going to put a lot of pressure on their goal scorers. It's going to put a lot of pressure on Sean Couturier and even Claude Giroux, who obviously is playing on the wing, but still a big-time playmaker. So we'll have to see where the Flyers get to there. But, Joe, I think at least one good thing is they look very much set on defense and in net. I think we know it's going to be Carter Hart and Martin Jones, and we know there's 6 D pairs. Carter Hart did miss practice the other day on Thursday. The Flyers said it was because of maintenance. They don't have concerns about him for the regular season opener on October 15th, but he is not playing in Friday night's preseason finale, but they do not have concerns about him. So for the most part, I think the defense and the situation in net looks pretty good, and I think that's a real positive.
Yeah, I just to comment on what you said there about the early season thing, and I'm not going to sit here and try to roll out the cliches that we hear from the players, but you hear it all the time. 2 points in November count just as much as 2 points in this season. April would be the last month of the regular season, but it's true. And just to borrow a theory from Al Morganti, he for years has always said, you want to look at where you are in Thanksgiving and the holidays, because the lineage between where teams are at the Thanksgiving and the holidays and those that go on to make the playoffs is very definitive. And Thanksgiving and the holidays is 2 months into the season. It's not that long. So you can't mess around with 2 months. Of course, the St. Louis Blues bucked that trend a few years ago, but they're the exception. That was, everybody talked about how crazy that run was. The run, of course, started here in Philadelphia, and that's why it got a lot of attention in this area. But you can't ignore what the normal trend is, and you can't just go out there and lay up the first bunch of games because you have injury issues, you have this, you have that. Every team goes through something. So the games, again, in the standings, the game in October and November count just as much as the game in March and April. And you can't afford to just go out there and say, oh, well, it's only October. It's only the third week of the season. It's only our first road trip, or whatever the case may be, because that stuff's not going to work. And come April, you're going to go, man, it would have been great if we could get, grab 4 points out of that road trip that we took back in November, where we didn't get any. Heck, the Flyers a few years ago, how many times did they look at that holiday road trip as the turning point of their season? But if you remember, they were in such a bad spot at that holiday road trip that they needed to go on an incredible run just to get in the playoffs. And I don't think that is anything that any player or coach wants to sign up for before the season starts. Yeah. So you don't want to be playing playoff type games from the end of January to the end of the season just to get in. You don't want that. So, you have to take the beginning of the season just as the weight of importance has to be the same as a game in February and March. It really does.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think the fan base has all the right to be frustrated by a slow start. They were immensely frustrated by last season, and justifiably so. The team allowed more goals than anyone in hockey, had the 30th ranked penalty kill. It took a major step back, and the fan base saw a busy offseason, a pretty good job by Chuck Fletcher to retool this team, give it a new look. Now they really got to put it onto the ice, and I don't think Flyers fans will be happy with a so-so start. They won't be happy with a bad start. And naturally, in pro sports, when fans are frustrated, pressure builds, and this is a win now season for the Flyers. Like, they have a lot of veterans on 1-year deals. Some of their big names they brought in, of course, you think are here for the future, like Ryan Ellis, Cam Atkinson, Rasmus Ristolainen's on the final year of his deal, and I'm sure they probably want to re-sign him depending on how things go. Actually, they definitely probably want to re-sign him. But they have a lot of older players on 1-year deals that are trying to make this a real important, impactful season for the Flyers. And if things start slow, maybe you start questioning, okay, where do we go after this season? Because we have a lot of guys that are probably going to be on their way out. We need some of our younger kids to step up and play better. And we have another big offseason ahead of us. So long story short, the beginning of the season is important. And the Flyers are facing some depth issues to start it. There's no doubt about that.
And like you said, it's what have you done for me lately in pro sports? Just ask Nick Sirianni.
Yeah.
He was the coaching genius after the first week. And then, you turn on the radio, either of the sports stations in town, and you hear people calling for his job 4 games into his head coaching career. So of course that's the NFL. So it's much more magnified in that particular league, but it's the same can say, true across the 4 major sports, of course. And even in college sports these days, it's what have you done for me lately? Nobody's talking about, what you did 2 or 3 years ago or 5 or 10 years ago, for sure. It's all about now.
Absolutely. And I want to be clear too. I really like Scott Laughton. I know I'm questioning the Flyers center depth. Scott Laughton is one of my favorite players in terms of what he does on the ice, his impact. I really like him, but I really like him when he's in a 3rd, 4th line spot where his effectiveness is really, really accentuated. And right now, like he started training camp on the 4th line wing, and now he's looking like maybe a 2nd line center or at least a 3rd line center. And that just shows you how much their depth has been hit. I really think he's at his best when he can score, he can provide offense. I think he's more skilled than he gets credit for, but when he's in a lesser role in terms of being that like go-to offensive guy. And now he's going to be looking at a role where he's really going to have to do a lot down the middle of the ice, produce offense. Part of what we loved about the Flyers all season was that it allowed some of their depth players to really be depth guys. And that made them look really deep. Now, a lot more on everyone's plate as this season gets started. But we will have to see how it all unfolds. I know, Joe, you and I were super excited for the October 15th regular season opener. I'm super excited for pre and post game live. And I think Flyers fans are excited for this season. I think there's still plenty of reason to be excited, but we will have to watch how the Flyers make up for all these injuries and Morgan Frost not making the roster. It does change things, and we'll see how it all transpires. But Joe Fordyce, thank you so much as always. Great chatting with you. Cannot wait to chat with you again. A big time thank you to Steve Graham, our Sixers video producer, who's helping us out with the Flyers Talk podcast today. Big time thanks to Steve. And Flyers fans, as always, thank you for listening to the latest Flyers Talk podcast. Wherever you get your podcasts, please rate and listen, and we cannot wait to talk to you next time.